Chapter 935. The Empyrean Demon Monarch. The Blood Demon Emperor's soul sure is powerful. His soul's dissipated in my sea of consciousness, so I should be able to absorb it and strengthen my own soul, thought Jianqin. Without any hesitation, he collected his thoughts and began absorbing the soul. On the 9th floor of the hall, Jianqin currently sat on the ground with his legs crossed. His eyes were closed. No one knew exactly what had happened. Newbies paced about worriedly beside him. He knew that the Blood Demon Emperor's soul had entered Jianqin's sea of consciousness, but he could do nothing about the current situation. All he could do was wait on one side. Jianqin, I really can't help you this time. You have to survive. Nothing must happen to you, Newbies prayed inside. Although he had only agreed to follow Jianqin for 10 years after being lured out of the Cross Mountains by a corpse of a clansman, the relationship between the two of them had unknowingly undergone great changes after so many years. They were no longer bound by profit and had become close friends. As a result, Newbies felt extremely worried when Jianqin faced up against such dangers. Thisnik slowly stood up from the ground at this moment. When the Blood Demon Emperor had entered his mind earlier, he had devoured a small portion of his soul, causing great injury to Thisnik. He had only recovered just now. Thisnik stared coldly at Jianqin as killing intent poured from his eyes without restraint. He said coldly, Octoterra Emperor, I never thought that you'd still be alive, much less think that this entire divine hall was just a scheme of yours. You wanted to draw us in from the outside so you could choose a talented body to possess. Thisnik had no idea that it was the Blood Demon Emperor. Even now, he still believed that person who tried to devour his soul was the Octoterra Emperor. Octoterra Emperor, the ruler of the Turtle Clan's soul must have been devoured by you already. It'll still take you some time for you gain full control over the body, so that'll be the perfect time to kill you. Thisnik's face was sunken and his 2 blades were already in hand. Newbies immediately blocked him as soon as he saw that Thisnik wanted to attack Jianqin. He said coldly, Don't you dare harm Jianqin when the great Newbies is here. Piss off, you're not my opponent. If I wanted to kill you, it would be as simple as squashing an ant. Thisnik's eyes were filled with disdain. He did not view Newbies as someone worthy. How could the prideful Newbies endure such provocation from Thisnik? A tremendous presence immediately began to radiate from him, and his gaze turned into a glare at that very moment. Killing intent began to surge without the slightest intention of restraint. Thisnik, there has never been a good outcome for those who dare to speak to the great Newbies like that. To me, killing you is a piece of cake. If it weren't for the fact that someone had deposited that power in you, I really would be looking down on you, Newbies growled. If it were some other time in some other place, I would definitely have a real battle with you and see just what you can do. Too bad it's not right now. I need to eliminate the ruler of the Turtle Clan or I probably won't be able to leave this place after the Octoterra Emperor achieves full control. Newbies, I originally saved the Emperor's power for fighting over the legacy's inheritance, but now, I have to use it. I'll completely end the lives of you two with a strand now. A terrifying and pure power radiated from Thisnik. It floated out slowly, before gathering at his fingertip. This was an Emperor's power, the power a Saint Emperor deposited within him. At the same time, it was his greatest trump card. Just a strand of it was enough to heavily wound 9th Heavenly Layer Saint Kings. Newbie's complexion became extremely ugly. He could feel its power. It was certain death if he faced up against it. Thisnik stared at the power at his fingertip and said, It should be some type of great honor for you to die from a strand of Emperor's power. Newbies, Octoterra Emperor, I'll end your lives completely right now. Killing intent flickered wildly in Thisnik's eyes and he was about to shoot the power at them. However, a huge stone slab fell from the ceiling at this very moment, creating a boom as it struck the ground. Thisnik could not help but slow down due to the sudden occurrence. He looked up subconsciously. A huge hole was revealed in the ceiling of the hall that had been covered up by the stone. A gentle azure light glowed from within, but nothing inside could be seen clearly. This is the center of the Octoterra Divine Hall. It's where the control center is. Thisnik could not help but call out. His face was filled with joy. Without any hesitation, he dispersed the power at his fingertip and shot into the hole. The azure light quickly disappeared after Thisnik had entered, and in a moment it had completely vanished with the hole disappearing as well. The ceiling also perfectly returned to how it was before. All that was left was a large stone slab lying on the ground now. I never thought that was actually the center of the divine hall. Newbies stared at the ceiling in dejection, while envy burned and flickered in his eyes. Unfortunately, Thisnik had the Emperor's power, which was strong enough to even destroy the divine hall. He did not dare to fight over it with him at all. The 9th floor of the hall became peaceful once again with Thisnika's disappearance. Only Jianchen and Newbies were still there. Currently, Jianchen devoted all his efforts into absorbing the Blood Demon Emperor's remaining soul fragments. He placed all his attention on his sea of consciousness, completely unaware of the outside world. He was also unaware of the fact that Thisnik had entered the center of the divine hall. He would gain control over the hall without much time, allowing him to use the power of the divine hall as he wished. Jianchen had no impression of time inside his sea of consciousness. All he could feel was that his soul was rapidly becoming stronger, while the residual soul fragments were rapidly growing weaker. Devouring one's soul was virtually unheard of. It unheard of on the Tianyuan continent, as it basically would not happen in this world. The reason why the Blood Demon Emperor could devour both the Samic Emperor and the Octoterra Emperor's souls was because he had the Empyrean Demon Orb. Right now, the reason why Jianchen could devour the Blood Demon Emperor's soul was because he had entered Jianchen's Sea of Consciousness by himself. The collapsed soul would disperse into the surroundings with the death of its owner, but as it was in a different environment, Jianchen's Sea of Consciousness, it was able to survive and linger. This was the reason why Jianchen could absorb the soul. Jianchen would not have been able to do this if it had occurred outside. The soul contained fragments of memories and some comprehensions of the mysteries of the world, so when Jianchen absorbed the soul, he took these for himself. This allowed his comprehension of the laws of the world to skyrocket. Even though they were only incomplete fragments, they still came from the Blood Demon Emperor. Jianchen benefited greatly from this, allowing his comprehension to shoot up to the level of a 7th heavenly layer Saint Rulers from the 1st heavenly layer where he had stagnated. He caught up with the 2nd layer of the chaotic body. Time passed silently. Jianchen finally absorbed all of the Blood Demon Emperor's soul after some time, allowing his own soul to strengthen quickly. The only pity he felt was that he did not see any memories from the Samic Emperor or the Octoterra Emperor from the fragments of souls. It was as if the Blood Demon Emperor did not learn anything about their memories at all when he had devoured them in the first place. Jianchen's Sea of Consciousness had stopped churning long ago. Only the Empyrean Demon Orb floated in there as it shone with a demonic red light. Jianchen gathered his attention on the orb. The Empyrean Demon Orb clearly originated from the same era as the Azulite Sword Spirits. Jianchen was extremely curious about its exact details. Ziying, Qing Su-a, so what is this Empyrean Demon Orb? Jianchen asked the Sword Spirits. Right now, only the Sword Spirits could provide him with information regarding it, as even the Blood Emperor Demon had no idea about its true origins. All he knew was its name, and the fact that it was a special, wondrous item. The Sword Spirit seemed to hesitate slightly before replying to Jianchen's question. Master, the Empyrean Demon Orb was a famed treasure of the Empyrean Demon Monarch in the past. It was forged from her essence blood, and it's quite a powerful demon artifact. So who's this Empyrean Demon Monarch? Is she powerful? Why did her treasure end up here? Jianchen asked. The Empyrean Demon Monarch was a demon monarch of the demon realm. Not only was she the greatest demoness, she was extremely powerful and stood at the peak of demon monarch, only an inch away from demon emperor. The Empyrean demon arts she created was extraordinary in power as well and was considered one of the high-level cultivation methods in the demon realm at that time. The soul-devouring force cultivation method was infamous, able to kill on contact. It was extremely terrifying. This soul-devouring force is similar to the Chi of Slaughter and the baleful Een force Master knows. These two powers are all derived from the soul-devouring force, and are much, much weaker when compared to it. Just that afterward, A great battle occurred where we were. It was extremely intense, leading to the deaths of countless experts in the void. The Empyrean demon monarch also perished in that battle. We too find it extremely odd that her Empyrean demon orb would appear here. Chapter 936, Trapped in the Divine Hall. The Empyrean demon orb may be quite a powerful demon artifact, but it's extremely special, completely different from other artifacts. Once it takes a master, it will fuse with their soul, just like with the Blood Demon Emperor. But he was only able to obtain the cultivation method of the Empyrean demon monarch after fusing with the orb and was unable to use it. Otherwise, he definitely would not have ended up like that, Ziying explained to Jianchen. Looks like the Empyrean demon orb is much more powerful than the saint artifact, murmured Jianchen. Right now, his greatest artifact was the saint artifact, so he could not help but compare it to that. Master, the true power of the Empyrean demon orb is unimaginable. You can't compare it to the saint artifact. In the past, just a single strand of soul-devouring force from the orb would be enough to turn the saint artifact into nothingness. Qing Sua's voice rang out. Jianchen's heart shivered when he heard that, shocked by the power of the orb. The saint artifact was so powerful that even saint emperors struggled to break it, yet just a single strand of soul-devouring force from the Empyrean demon orb would be enough to reduce the saint artifact to nothing. Didn't that mean a single strand was enough to easily kill off a saint emperor? But unfortunately, the Empyrean demon orb is extremely weak right now. It must have been greatly damaged from the battle last time. Ziying's voice rang out again, this time filled with pity. At this moment, the Empyrean demon orb began to glow slightly and Jianchen's sea of consciousness tremored slightly as well. At the same time, Jianchen seemed to feel a connection between his spirit and the Empyrean demon orb. This Empyrean demon orb wants to take you as its master. You overestimate yourself. Ziying's voice was filled with anger and deep disdain that he struggled to conceal. With a flash of purple light, he immediately disrupted the process of Jianchen becoming the orb's master. The red light on the Empyrean demon orb flickered frantically. It seemed to feel wronged, as if it was a bullied little girl. It was currently crying by itself. The Empyrean demon orb wants to take me as its master? Doesn't that mean that I can obtain the Empyrean demon arts once cultivated by the Empyrean demon monarch? Jianchen asked out of curiosity. Master, the Empyrean demon monarch's Empyrean demon arts is indeed a great cultivation method, but it can't compare to chaotic force. This is because the chaotic body is a supreme cultivation method that has completely surpassed it. Master has no need to tamper with it, as it will only affect your future accomplishments, explained Ziying. However, he did keep one fact from Jianchen. No one had ever been able to reach the utmost peak of the chaotic body in all of time. Master, Ziying is right. Even if you cultivate the Empyrean demon arts to its highest level, you'll only be able to reach the Empyrean demon monarch's former level of cultivation, who had even struggled to break through to demon emperor. If Master cultivates the chaotic body to the utmost extreme, Master will probably reach the levels of Grand Exalt. You'll be able to crush experts like the Empyrean demon monarch with your fingers. Qing Sua's pleasant voice rang out. It was like music played by an immortal. Jianchen understood now. The Empyrean demon arts created by the Empyrean demon monarch was a high-level cultivation method, but it was nowhere near the chaotic body in terms of quality. It could not be compared to the chaotic body. If he used this method of cultivation, it was extremely likely that his future accomplishments would end up being limited instead, preventing him from standing at the very apex in the end. Then I won't cultivate the Empyrean demon arts if that's the case and focus on the chaotic body. Jianchen immediately gave up on the idea of cultivating the Empyrean demon arts. Empyrean demon orb, this is not a place where you can stay. You should leave. Afterward, Ziying invited the Empyrean demon orb to leave, before chasing it out of Jianchen's sea of consciousness. The Empyrean demon orb seemed to suffer greatly, constantly flickering with red light as it made its way out. It seemed to be crying silently as it was forced out of Jianchen's sea of consciousness. Although the Empyrean demon orb was quite a powerful artifact, it was extremely weak, just like the sword spirits. Only those who cultivated the Empyrean demon arts could use it, so it was of no use to Jian Qin, who did not plan to cultivate the arts. Jian Chen's consciousness returned to his body. When he slowly opened his eyes, he immediately noticed the orb that shone with a demonic light as it floated before him. "Are you Jian Qin or the Octaterra Emperor?" A voice sounded from nearby. Newbies stood 20 meters away cautiously, staring at Jian Chen with a glare. His face was filled with anxiety and worry. Right now, Newbies was unable to tell whether Jian Chen had been possessed by the Octaterra Emperor or not. Jian Chen could not help but smile when he saw how Newbies acted. He said, "Newbies, I'm still me. Not only did the Blood Demon Emperor fail to take my body, I even ended him." "Jian Chen, is it really you?" Newbies immediately became excited. He had already known Jian Chen for quite some time, so he was extremely familiar with him. He was able to confirm that he had not been possessed just from the way that Jian Chen spoke and behaved. But soon afterward, Newbies became stunned. "What did you say? That soul that wanted to possess you was the Blood Demon Emperor? Not the Octaterra Emperor?" Jian Chen shook his head gently and narrated everything that had happened between him and the Blood Demon Emperor to Newbies. Newbies could not help but gulp and sigh in disbelief when he heard that the Samic Emperor and the Octaterra Emperor had both been devoured by the Blood Demon Emperor. Suddenly, Jian Chen seemed to think of something. He looked around and said, "Where's Thisnik? Where'd he go?" Newbies immediately became stern. "Jian Chen, Thisnik has already entered the control center of the hall. He's currently taking control, so I believe he'll become the owner of the hall without much longer. We need to stop him." Jian Chen's expression changed when he heard that, before suddenly looking at the ceiling. His face immediately sunk. He had learned a little about the Divine Hall from the memory fragments of the Blood Demon Emperor as well. The most important piece of information was where the control center was located, and it just happened to be in the ceiling. "The control center is sealed up," Jian Chen said with a deep voice. "Jian Chen, did you learn how to open the control center from the memories of the Blood Demon Emperor?" Newbies asked hopefully. He had already learned from Jian Chen that there was no path out of the Octaterra Divine Hall. The only way out would be taking control of the Divine Hall and sending people out using its power. Jian Chen shook his head. All he knew was where the control center was located. He had no idea how to open it. "Then we can only break through this entrance." Battle intent surged in Newbie's eyes and a terrifying aura began to radiate from him. He had completely unleashed his might as a magical beast that was only an inch from Class 8. "Let's try it." A sliver of determination appeared in Jian Chen's eyes. He had no other choice now that the situation was like this. Although he had devoured a part of the Blood Demon Emperor's soul, that did not give him control over the Divine Hall. He needed to control the center of the hall to control of the Divine Hall. There was no other way than that. The center was crucial for the control over the Divine Hall. With his king armament in hand, Jian Chen poured chaotic force into it, causing it to shine with a dark light. Its devastating aura was terrifying. Although the current chaotic force was not the true chaotic force, it was no different in behavior. A sharp howl rang out from Jian Chen's side. Newbies had already disappeared, now replaced by a snake that was 30 meters long. It was awe-inspiring, filled with nobility and pride. Newbies had already turned back to his true form, currently charging up his most powerful secret technique. Blinding gold and silver lights shone from him, and as he opened his mouth, a huge ball of liquid venom was immediately spat out, striking the ceiling of the hall with lightning speed. The venom of the silver-striped gold snake was supreme. It was the third greatest on the Tianyuan continent, while the venom he had just spat out was from one of his secret techniques. Its potency had reached a shocking level. Newbie's venom seemed to be able to eat through everything. As soon as it came into contact with the ceiling, signs of corrosion immediately began to appear on the ceiling, which even Saint Kings struggled to break. It was eaten away at a visible rate. However, all it managed to do was corrode away the outermost layer, before being stopped by the structure that was filled with the Divine Hall's power. It stopped there. 2 arm-thick streams of lights, one silver and one golden, shot out from his mouth and struck the ceiling heavily. It produced a great boom. This attack was in no way weaker than the full-powered strike of a third heavenly layer Saint King. At the same time, Jianchen struck out with all his might. He rose up and his king armament viciously stabbed at the same area targeted by newbies. Boom! Wild ripples of energy knocked Jianchen back and forced him back to the ground. However, the entrance to the hall's center remained fine. Other than the outer layer eaten away by newbies' poison, there was not even a mark. The entrance is as tough as the divine hall. We can't break through it with our current strength, Jianchen said with a sunken face. His complexion was extremely ugly. Once Thisnik gained control over the divine hall, they would no longer have any ability to fight him. All they could do then was hide in the Saint Artifact. Jianchen had learned from the Blood Demon Emperor's memories that control over the hall meant control over its power. The hall's power could not be used to injure people outside, but it could be used however the person in control wished inside. Thisnik completely had the power to use it against them. The hall's supreme power was equivalent to the Emperor's power in Thisnik. Only Saint Emperors can break through this divine hall. Does that mean that only a Saint Emperor's power can break through this entrance as well? If that's the case, all we can do is watch helplessly as Thisnik gains control. Newbie's face was filled with regret. Chapter 937, Battle of Flame City, 1. Maybe there is one way we can break through this entrance, Jianchen said with a dark face. Newbie's face lit up when he heard that. He looked at Jianchen in interest and asked, Jianchen, what other idea do you have? Find the Emperor armament and then use its power to break through, said Jianchen. Newbie's positivity drained very quickly. He looked at Jianchen with a troubled expression. It's not like you don't know about the Emperor armament's power. We can't control it right now with our current strength. Even if we do have it under control, can it really break through the entrance? You have to remember that even the Emperor armament is currently stuck in the hall and unable to break out. That doesn't matter. We need to try it because there are no better ideas. All we can do now is hope that the entrance to the center of the hall isn't too tough. However, we need to make breakthroughs before we go find the Emperor armament. When my chaotic body reaches the third layer, the Emperor armament shouldn't be able to injure me anymore. I can control it easily by then, Jianchen murmured. Alright, I've reached the peak of class 7 ages ago. If it weren't for the restrictions to enter the Divine Hall, I would have broken through long ago. We might be able to get through that entrance once we break through and use the Emperor armament, said Newbies. Afterward, Jianchen and Newbies immediately entered the Saint Artifact. They wanted to reach Saint King in a single stroke. The Saint Artifact was extremely tough. By hiding in it, Thisnik would struggle to break through it temporarily, even if he controlled the Divine Hall and used it to attack the artifact. As a result, the Saint Artifact had now become Jianchen and Newbie's only line of defense. Jianchen sat in the center of an extremely peaceful hall in the Saint Artifact. Mountainous piles of high-class monster cores and grand-quality crystal coins were stacked around him, with fist-sized divine quality crystals sandwiched in between. These were the items Jianchen needed to rely on the most to break through. They could provide Jianchen with tremendous quantities of energy. As long as he had enough time, he could break through successfully. The first layer of the chaotic body gave me the strength of a third heavenly layer Saint Ruler, while the second layer elevated my power to the seventh heavenly layer. With a ruler armament, I could display the strength of the ninth heavenly layer and the third heavenly layer of Saint King when coupled with a king armament instead. I should be able to skip through the 8th and 9th heavenly layers and directly arrive at Saint King with the third layer of the chaotic body. I just wonder how strong I'll become when I use the king armament, Jianchen thought. He was filled with anticipation. And there's also the Emperor armament. It's already terrifying enough when no one's in control. I wonder how strong I'll become if I use it after I break through. Will I be strong enough to go toe-to-toe with Hall Elders? The Golden Silk Mail is still with the Divine General of the Serpent God Hall. I might not know how to strengthen it, but it's a unique treasure that the world has given birth to. It's also related to a calamity. When I get strong enough, I have to personally pay a visit to the Serpent God Hall and get it back. Jianchen felt rather urgent about it. He knew that it would not be far until that day would come. Once he broke through, he should possess enough power to fight the 4 divine generals if he used the Emperor armament. Cultivating, I need to quickly cultivate. I need to reach the third layer as soon as possible this time. Otherwise, let alone getting the golden silk mail back, I won't even be able to leave this divine hall alive. Jian Chen quickly dismissed his thoughts, devoting all his attention to concentration. The sword spirit materialized above his head as they assisted him in the refinement of the monster cores, crystal coins, and crystals. A faint smell of blood lingered from the mountainous piles of monster cores. He had taken them all from the bodies of the vicious beasts from the hall recently, so the energy in each monster core was extremely active. It made refinement even easier. As time was tight, Jian Chen only used freshly harvested monster cores, and not the ancient ones that had solidified from the saint artifact. They were all high-class monster cores, but quite a lot of their energy had leaked away and solidified. This was why it would take great effort and time to refine them. It was unsuitable for the current situation. Newbies did not just sit around as Jian Chen refined the monster cores. He cultivated quietly in another peaceful hall, using a different method of cultivation to Jian Chen. He absorbed the hidden essence in the old snake from the beast god continent. The entire process was much easier compared to Jian Chen, and it was faster as well. The center of the divine hall was a very small room. It was empty and without any furniture. The only thing present was a shrunken divine hall that floated in the center 1 meter in the air. The divine hall still possessed a tremendous aura, but it was extremely small. It was less than 1 meter in length and width. If someone familiar with the divine hall had discovered it, they would realize that it was the Octaterra divine hall but shrunken down by countless times. Thisnik currently sat with his legs crossed before this tiny version of the hall. His energy flowed unceasingly into the hall. Octaterra Emperor, never did I think you'd still be alive, and that your legacy was all just a trick you set up. We've all been tricked by you. But so what? The power of an emperor is present in my body. Not to mention being just a soul, even if you possess the ruler of the Turtle Clan successfully, you must be extremely weak. I'd like to see how you resist my attacks with the emperor's power. I might not be able to get a legacy, but my possession of the hall cannot be prevented by anyone. Once I control this place, there might not even be the need for me to waste my emperor's power. Just the hall could be enough to completely kill you off. Thisnika's eyes flickered with a sharp light. Although the Octaterra Emperor still being alive brought great shock to him, he felt no fear because he possessed ways to deal with the Octaterra Emperor. Octaterra Emperor, the time of your death will come in less than 5 years. It's just a pity that the ruler of the Turtle Clan will end up so miserably. In the blink of an eye, Jian Chen had already stayed in the Divine Hall for a year. Right now, the Flame Mercenaries had officially completed the construction of Flame City on the distant Tianyuan continent. The city walls were jet black. From afar, it seemed like a serpent dragon coiled up there. It possessed a tremendous aura and would unconsciously pressure the depths of people's hearts. They felt like they were walking beside a vicious beast as they passed by the walls. The walls were 100 meters tall and several dozen kilometers long. Many magical crystal cannons were mounted on top, and many soldiers stood next to each one. They were all extremely cold and stern-looking. Today was the 3rd day the city had been completed, as well as the liveliest day since construction had finished. This was because the Vice City Lord had invited various large clans and organizations within a radius of 100,000 kilometers to come and participate in the ribbon cutting of the city. This was an extremely special day to Flame City. Not only did the king of the Jessen Kingdom come after traveling a great distance, even the ancestor of the Changyang clan and Uncle Chang came. It could be said that Changyang Zuyunkong's life had been saved by Jian Chen. If Jian Chen had not gone to the Fantasy Star Ocean for the dragon's saliva, he probably would have passed away on 3 Saint Island, never to be able to return to the Tianyuan continent and reunite with his family. As a result, Changyang Zuyunkong cared for his talented grandson very much. The Flame Mercenaries were also founded by Jian Chen personally, so he naturally viewed the group with great importance. Even Ming Dong, Dugu Feng, Tai Ta, Little Fatty, Wang Yifeng, and the others all came out of seclusion to participate in this ribbon cutting. As the core members of the Flame Mercenaries, How could they not appear on this important day where Flame City was formally established? After so many years of seclusion, all of them had made great improvements in their strengths. They did not become saint rulers, but everyone besides Wang Yifeng had reached the level of Heaven Saint Master. Within them, the one who progressed the fastest was not the talented Ming Dong or Little Fatty but the simple and honest Tai Ta. His speed could literally be described as divine, advancing at a startling rate. He had actually caught up and completely overtaken everyone else, reaching the peak of Heaven Saint Master. He was only an inch from Saint Ruler. Tai Ta underwent great changes that were coupled with his terrifying cultivation speed. Before, he was burly and dark-skinned like burnt charcoal. But now, all the pigment in his skin was completely gone. It had instead been replaced by a golden color and could actually shine with a metallic glint when he stood beneath the sun. Other than his skin tone, Tai Ta had become even larger and even bullier. He was now 4 meters tall. Coupled with his body frame, he seemed like a small mountain. Even under his honest appearance, a dignified aura could be found from time to time. As Flame City was the first city ever to be constructed purely out of tungsten alloy, its renown had spread through the entire continent long ago. This was why the boisterous atmosphere had completely exceeded people's imaginations. Other than the people invited from the surrounding region, many representatives from large clans and organizations had traveled hundreds of thousand kilometers, or even millions of kilometers to participate in the ribbon-cutting ceremony. This included an imperial protector of the Qin Huang kingdom with their third prince, Qin Ji, and Qin Shao, with a great elder of the Tianqin clan. They had all hurried over, travel-worn and weary. There were even some barely known hermit clans and even ancient clans that had sent people to congratulate Flame City with gifts. Even the Grand Elder of the Radiant Saint Union arrived personally under the accompaniment of 3 saint rulers to give the mercenaries good wishes. This time, almost a third of the entire continent's organizations had gathered in this tiny piece of land that Flame City sat on. It was so busy and lively that it could be considered as unprecedented. Chapter 938, Battle of Flame City, 2. The Vice City Lord of Flame City currently led a group of flame mercenaries to personally welcome the guests that had come from everywhere. The happiest and most excited person among all the guests would without a doubt be the king of Jizum Kingdom. He was filled with excitement that he struggled to suppress as he gazed at the mighty city walls and the various organizations that stood on the apex of the Tianyuan continent. He had never even heard about many of these organizations. The smile on his face never disappeared. The source of his joy was the fact that the first vice city lord of the most valuable city in all of history was his daughter, Yu. Everyone had agreed in unison over the matter of Yu taking up the position, with no one against the suggestion. Flame City only existed because of Jianchen, while Yu was Jianchen's fiancée, the person closest to him. Her management abilities were outstanding as well, impressive in all aspects, so she was most suitable for taking up the position. It could be said that other than Yu, there was no one else suitable for the position of Vice City Lord. The uniqueness and value of the city made it so that it could not end up in the hands of outsiders no matter what. Although no one knew where Jianchen was due to the matters regarding the winged tiger god, it did not sully the glory of Flame City. It was the only structure with city walls made completely out of tungsten alloy. It was equivalent to the 7 capitals that had existed for countless years on the Tianyuan continent. The ancient clan of Tianmu has come. The ancient clan of Mogan has come. More and more people gathered inside Flame City. These people arrived from various large organizations as the heavy, clear voice rang out. Changyang Zhu Yunkong and Bai Hai currently sat together in the huge imperial palace at the center of the city as they conversed over wine. They both smiled without restraint, observing the beautifully decorated hall from time to time. They were both at ease. Never did I think that my grandson would be so daring to actually create such a great city out of tungsten alloy. This is unbelievable, Changyang Zhu Yunkong sighed. He was extremely happy. A happy smile also formed on Bai Hai's face when he heard that. That kid is quite good, especially with his talent in cultivation. It's unprecedented, using less than 30 years to reach Saint Ruler. His future accomplishments will definitely exceed what we can imagine. Bai Hai seemed to think of something as he reached there and sighed gently. It's a pity that he got sucked into the matters regarding the winged tiger god. The entire continent is looking for him now. Although he has hidden himself somewhere beyond the continent, even we don't know if he has come across any dangers. All we can do is hope he returns safely. Changyang Zuyongkong's happiness gradually disappeared when he heard that. He said with a frown, "The matter regarding the winged tiger god is indeed troublesome. There are just too many things that connect to it. Unless he obtains power that can rival the 10 protector clans, he'll only be able to hand over the winged tiger god if he wants to return to the continent." Bai Hai and Changyang Zuyongkong had learned of each other's identities long ago. They were both grandfathers of Jianqin if they looked at their position in the family hierarchy. Thus, they were members of the same family through Jianqin even though they had different ages. Ming Dong, Dugufeng, Little Fatty, and Tai Ta all gathered in a garden within the palace. Unknowingly, a few years passed just like that. "I wonder where Jianqin is, and if he's well or not," the white-clothed Ming Dong murmured. Not only had Ming Dong's strength increased greatly after the few years of secluded cultivation, even his bearing underwent changes unknowingly. He had become less rash and more composed than before, seeming more modest and mature now. "Don't worry, he'll be fine for sure." A cold voice rang out. It was the prideful Dugufeng. He was no different from before. Today is the important day that Flame City is formally established. As the first one in history to be constructed entirely out of tungsten alloy, news of it has spread through the continent long ago. Jianqin might not know. "Do you think Jianqin would hurry back?" Little Fatty said. He was filled with anticipation. All his fatty tissue from before could no longer be seen. His chubby stature from before had disappeared completely as well. He had become even more solidly built. Little Fatty's talent was very great. As Uncle Xiu refused to let him into the matters of the Tianyuan continent and had only wanted him to spend his life peacefully, his talent had been suppressed. However, now that he began to cultivate arduously, his rate of improvement was heavenly. Although it could not be compared with Tai Ta, it was not a speed that ordinary people could even consider. "When Jianqin comes back, I want to have a solid fight with him and see whether I'm stronger or he is." Tai Ta sat there like a mountain as he said with a soft voice. Excitement flickered in his eyes. At this moment, Tai Ta was the most powerful person among all of them. Even Ming Dong was not his opponent. His brute force was particularly great, even more terrifying than that of magical beasts. "Tai Ta, if you want to fight with Jianqin, you better devote your efforts to reaching Saint Ruler first. You may be strong, but there's a difficult gap to cross between Saint Ruler and Heaven Saint Masters," Ming Dong joked. "I'm not scared. Right now, I feel like I can defeat ordinary Saint Rulers. Once Jianqin gets back, I need to try him and see just how great the difference between the two of us still is. When we were at Kargath Academy, the difference wasn't this big. I hope Jianqin doesn't pull too far ahead." Tai Ta was confident. He could not help but think back to the time when he was at Kargath Academy with Jianqin. With that, he could not help but reveal an idiotic smile on his honest-looking face as he reminisced. Half a day later, Yu finally had some time to rest. She had been busy with receiving the guests. With a purple dress, she currently sat wearily in a seat as she rubbed her temples. As the Vice City Lord of Flame City, she needed to personally receive many people who had come from hermit or even ancient clans. This was why she was so tired. After so many years, Yu had changed greatly as well. She was now even more mature than before, while her beauty was still as enchanting. It was enough to cause the hearts of countless men to run wild. Vaguely enough, there was even the unique bearing of an upper echelon member present on her. Her temperament had silently undergone changes after these years of managing and being in charge of the Flame Mercenaries. "Sister Yu, Lianer is so happy. The day which our Flame City can stand on the Tianyuan continent has finally arrived. We've looked forward to this day for so many years, and it's finally come true," a gentle voice sounded. Bai Lian ran over energetically in a luxurious long dress. Yu slowly sat up and said, "All the people that came this time has surprised me greatly, but..." Yu then paused as her eyebrows furrowed slightly. "Sister Yu, but what?" Bai Lian asked curiously as she blinked her large round eyes. But for some reason, I suddenly have an uneasy feeling, as if something bad is about to happen, said Yu. Bai Lian stared blankly as she thought slightly with a frown when she heard that. She then said, Sister Yu, you're worrying too much. Everyone on the Tianyuan continent knows that we have a protector clan backing up our mercenaries. I'm pretty sure no one will come looking for trouble. You're right, but why can't I let this uneasiness inside me be laid to rest? Yu murmured as she thought. Bai Lian rolled her eyes and giggled. Sister Yu, you can't be missing my brother, right? Yu's face became flushed as she faked her anger. Stop spilling nonsense, Yu. 20 kilometers away from the city, a large group had suddenly appeared at this moment. They were extremely numerous, extending as far as the eye could see with densely packed people. There were at least several millions of them. They currently traveled quickly in the direction of Flame City in a fan shape, bearing a threatening and aggressive manner. Over 20 people of different ages rode at the very front of the group. They were all on large, Class 5 magical beasts as they approached Flame City. Every single person seemed extremely ordinary, without a rippling of energy from their bodies. They all seemed like people who could not cultivate. However, it was not difficult to see their areas of extraordinaire when observed in detail. Every single movement of every single person seemed to conceal and abide to the laws of the world indescribably, as if they were using the energy of the world. All of them were at least saint rulers. At the very center of them was a young man who seemed to be in his 20s. His face was cold, while a sneer hung on his face. Killing intent poured without restraint from him. He was Bai Jian. Prince Bai Jian, there are countless experts gathered at Flame City right now. Are you sure they won't end up helping the Flame mercenaries if we strike at this moment? An old man beside Bai Jian asked with a deep voice. He was stern. Don't worry at all. I have a notice written up personally by the protector clans. Unless those hermit or ancient clans no longer want to stay on the continent, they won't disobey the commands from the protector clans, Bai Jian sneered. He had never looked away from the mighty city as he spoke. He was filled with hatred. Flame City is the first city to be built purely out of tungsten alloy on the continent. TSK, what extravagance! Jianchen, I'll be taking this tungsten alloy city that you spent countless years and manpower to build, with the entire continent as the audience. This is your outcome for taking my love. The killing intent and hatred in Bai Jian's heart had already surged to his limits. He was clenching his fists so tightly that his nails had already pierced through his skin. Chapter 939, Battle of Flame City, 3. In order to take Flame City in one stroke, Bai Jian had made ample preparations. First, he persuaded the other protector clans through his father's connection with a grand elder of the Yuan sect and gained their support. Afterward, he personally went around on the continent, persuading more than 20 peak-level mercenary groups. Each and every one of them was equivalent to hermit clans, with thousands of years of history. They all had a long history and great power. Not only would they have saint rulers, they all had at least 10,000 members as well. This was how the current group had been formed. All the mercenary groups had arrived through space gates set up by Bai Jian's father and the Grand Elder of the Yuan sect. There were several million present and each person was an elite, possessing formidable strength in battle. They outnumbered the Flame mercenaries by several folds. As there were numerous experts gathered in Flame City right now, the Flame mercenaries did not realize their arrival due to the mixing and mingling of auras in the city. Only when they were 10 kilometers from the city did the guards stationed on the walls realize their arrival. The guards immediately alerted their superior in charge of the city walls. The superior was a heaven saint master. He arrived at the walls completely clad in tungsten alloy armor as he focused his attention on the large group of people that slowly drew closer. So many people have come. Looking at how they're organized, they are clearly coming with ill intentions. It's bad news. Do they want to take our Flame City? Don't they know that we have powerful clans supporting us? The captain on the city walls sneered as scorn filled his eyes. He then turned to someone to his side. Enrith, stay here and guard the place. I'll go contact the Vice City Lord. Yes, sir. The captain quickly made his way to the central palace of Flame City and reported to Yu. Bai Jian's huge group was already 5 kilometers from the city when Yu received the news. All the experts in Flame City finally sensed them since they were at such a close range, and many people revealed uneasy expressions. In this current day, there was no one on the entire continent who did not know that the Flame Mercenaries possessed the support of the Changyang Protector clan and Mercenary City. Was there any group or organization that dared to provoke the well-supported Flame Mercenaries anymore? If that was the case, then the Flame Mercenaries would not have been able to control the tungsten alloy mine for so long. It would have been divided up between hermit and ancient clans long ago. Yu immediately became grim when she learned that people were attacking. An ill omen had lingered in her heart since long ago. She knew that the official establishment of the city would not be as peaceful as they wanted it to be. At the same time, she knew even better that the people who dared to mess with them right now were definitely remarkable. This was because they came to mess with their city at this moment in time, when plenty of bigwigs of the continent had gathered. They definitely would be in possession of a perfect plan. Yu treated this with utmost importance. She was unwilling to be careless even in the slightest. She immediately contacted the experts of the mercenaries, before rushing to the city walls with Changyang Zhu Yunkong, Bai Hai, and Jetta Tai. The huge group of invaders stopped quietly 5 kilometers away from the city. If someone looked down from the city walls, they would see a huge black mass of people that radiated with a towering presence. Bai Jian and his 20-odd saint rulers from the various mercenary groups currently sat on Class 5 magical beasts at the very front. Although the city gates were wide open, they did not hurry to attack. They needed to deal with all the experts gathered in Flame City first before they could attack, isolating them and preventing them from gaining support. If the Flame Mercenaries did not have support from the Hermit and the Ancient clans, they would not be able to repel Bai Jian's group with their own strength. Yu stood expressionlessly on the city walls. Her brows were deeply furrowed, while she was extremely grim. She knew that her ill premonition had finally arrived. Changyang Zhu Yunkong, Bai Hai, and Jetta Tai stood beside Yu. They all glared at the black mass of people below. Name yourselves. Why have so many of you gathered outside the city when we are holding the ribbon-cutting ceremony? Explain yourselves. Bai Hai bellowed. His loud voice exploded through the sky like a clap of thunder, reverberating through a radius of several dozen kilometers. Ah, you can call us the Extinguishing Alliance. You must know already why so many of us have gathered here today. Without long, the first city made from tungsten alloy on the continent will belong to the Extinguishing Alliance. Bai Jian laughed aloud as a certain madness appeared in his eyes. Humph, don't you dare try and take our Flame City. Yu's enchanting face was now furious. Flame City was a task Jianchen had handed over to her before he left, so it belonged to Jianchen. Now that it had just been constructed after countless years and difficulties, how could she let the city be taken away? Bai Jian stared coldly at Yu as he smiled evilly. You must be that Jelen Princess Yu of some Jessen kingdom, Jianchen's fiancée in name. Jianchen sure is fortunate to have stolen the heart of such a pretty girl. But it's a pity, from today onward his fiancée will belong to me. He stole something from me and brought pain and humiliation to me, Prince Bai Jian. I will return this pain and shame to him by 1,000 folds. Bai Jian's voice was filled with malice and it echoed through the entire city due to its loudness. Everyone naturally heard his insult to Yu. The city immediately fell into an uproar. All the people in the city, whether they had come as guests or were members of the Flame Mercenaries, put down the matters at hand and rushed to the city walls. Some people who were more powerful even flew there instead. Bang! In the palace, Ming Dong smashed the stone table in the pavilion where he sat. He said furiously, "Which bastard dares to insult my brother's fiancée? I definitely will not be letting this slide. Let's go check out who insulted my sister-in-law. I will definitely rip them into pieces." Taida also stood up, angry as well. Now that Jianchen is not here, we can't just watch his fiancée be insulted by other people. Let's go and teach that person a lesson, Wang Yufeng said furiously. He immediately placed his hand in his mouth to whistle, and a 5-meter-wide magical beast flew over, stopping right in front of him. Xiao Fei, let's fly in the direction of the city walls. There are some people provoking us. We gotta show them what we're made of. Wang Yifeng immediately leaped onto the magical beast's back and it took to the sky, making way directly for the city walls. Ming Dong and the other also made way to the city walls afterward. Grandpa Jun, Grandma Wang, the flame mercenaries seem to have encountered some troubles. I really do wonder who's brave enough to come at the flame mercenaries at this very moment. A girl spoke with a spirited voice as she rested in the palace. Her voice was very pleasant and possessed a numbing feeling, filled with allure. Those who were mentally weak would even become absolutely entranced by it. This lady was Tianmu Ling from the ancient Tianmu clan. Everyone knows that the flame mercenaries have a solid backing on the Tianyuan continent. If that person is not stupid, he definitely would have made plentiful preparations to come at this precise moment. They won't be fearing the flame mercenaries' backing at all. Maybe this is more complicated than it seems. Let's go and have a look, said Grandpa Jun. The three of them made their way to the city walls. The crowd within the city surged as everyone rushed in the direction of the city walls. The streets were filled with people, and even the skies possessed many heaven saint masters and saint rulers. Almost all of them were guests that had come to participate in the formal establishment of the city. As countless people descended on the city walls, it became filled with people in the blink of an eye. All of them stood on top with various attires. Ming Dong and the others gathered around Yu Yu as they all observed the huge army sternly. They asked, "Who are they? What do they want to do?" Yu Yu had already become pale white from anger. They claimed to be the Extinguishing Alliance, and they want to take our flame city. Her voice was filled with unconcealable anger. The Extinguishing Alliance, as the name suggests, aren't they just an alliance that wants to wipe us out? They sure are brave to openly announce that they are against us. Ming Dong's face darkened greatly. The people they brought are so powerful. I can't see through the 20-odd people at the front at all. Are they saint rulers? Little Fatty growled. Tai Ta's eyes lit up when he heard that. He immediately began to itch, eager to try them as battle intent burnt in his eyes. He said with a soft, deep voice, "Saint rulers? I'd like to see just how powerful they are. They've clearly come with preparations. We can't be careless." Bai Hai was grim while his eyebrows furrowed. Changyang Zuyunkong's eyes were cold as he glared at them. He growled, "Flame City belongs to my grandson. Objects of the Changyang clan aren't things that any random person can show up and just take." Seeing how the various representatives of large forces on the continent had gathered on the city walls, Bai Jian could not help but sneer even more. He clasped his hands at them. "Everyone, you are members of large, famed organizations of the Tianyuan continent. Today, you shall all be witnesses as I, Bai Jian, show you how the Extinguishing Alliance will take the first city on the continent to be made entirely of tungsten alloy. Now, please sit and watch on one side. After this has all been completed, Flame City will become Extinguished City. At that time, the ribbon-cutting ceremony will progress as planned, establishing Extinguished City as a place equal to the 7 capitals of the continent." Chapter 940, Battle of Flame City, 4. Prince Bai Jian. There seems to be a prince from the Felicity Empire called Bai Jian. Is he perhaps one of the 9 princes from the Felicity Empire of the 3 great empires? Even if that's the case, the 3 great empires are only as great as ancient clans. How can they contend with the flame mercenaries that have the support of a protector clan and mercenary city? Bai Jian will be getting more than he bargained for this time. He's bound to come all gloriously and leave in a wreck. If the flame mercenaries really were so easy to take down, they would have been ripped into pieces by those ancient clans long ago. This Bai Jian is one of the 9 princes of the Felicity Empire. With his background, it's impossible that he doesn't know who's supporting the flame mercenaries. But he just still happens to be daring enough. Just what assures him so much? Many people broke into discussions, constantly projecting their guesses and expressing their ideas. However, even more people just stood there, as if they were about to watch something good. They did not plan on taking part in this, only waiting to see the final outcome. Bai Jian's impudent words immediately made Yu Yu and the others reveal extremely ugly expressions. Changyang Zhu Yunkong rose up in the air and stopped 100 meters above the walls. He radiated with a vast presence, which caused the wind and clouds to churn. Just you is far from enough to take Flame City. I wonder how many Saint Kings you have brought? Changyang Zhu Yunkong roared. His voice boomed through the surroundings, and the aura from him in particular surged. Although Changyang Zhu Yunkong remained at the first heavenly layer of Saint King, his current presence had actually made many saint rulers that were far beyond his level involuntarily view him with increased respect. Even the few Saint Kings hidden in the group could not help but look toward him in curiosity as they broke into murmuring. Bai Jian stared at Changyang Zhu Yunkong and a cold light flashed through his eyes. He said coldly, "Who is sire? Name yourself." "I am Changyang Zhu Yunkong." Changyang Zhu Yunkong said as he normally would. "What? He's actually Changyang Zhu Yunkong. Is he a member of the Protector Changyang clan?" It's rumored that the Protector Changyang clan is split into 3 branches of Zhu, Yuan, and Qing. Is he perhaps a member of the Zhu branch? He's actually a member of the 10 Protector clans. I never thought that there would be people from the Protector clans present in the city. With a member of the Protector clans present, Bai Jian's gonna be returning in a horrible shape this time. The revelation of Changyang Zhu Yunkong's identity in public immediately led to an uproar. The 10 Protector clans were existences that always only existed within legends of the Tianyuan continent, because they were the most powerful clans on the continent. They had existed since the ancient times and possessed a lengthy history that was hundreds of thousands, or even millions of years long. No one knew exactly how deep their roots were. Traces of them would rarely be found even over centuries of millenniums, and even if they did appear, they would not just reveal themselves to the world. They would not let the world know that they existed. Only a few hermit clans and ancient clans with several thousands of years of history knew about them. But, without any exceptions, all the clans that knew of their existence possessed a type of admiration for them from the bottom of their hearts. This was because the Protector clans always took up the important role as the guardians of Tianyuan continent. They never interfered with any conflict on the continent, but silently protected the continent's peace. Repelling the invasion of the Beast God continent and other foreign races were an example of this. This was why they were so respected and possessed a supreme status among those clans. This time, the matters of the Winged Tiger God led to the invasion of the Beast God continent, forcing the Protector clans out into the eyes of the public out of some many years. This was why the news of the Protector clans had already spread throughout the continent. Everyone knew about them now. Changyang Zhu Yunkong's statement of identity immediately attracted the attention of everyone. Vast changes in everyone's gazes toward him occurred, some becoming filled with respect, some with envy, and so on. Bai Jian looked toward Changyang Zhu Yunkong and a cold sneer formed on his face. Since there are members of the Protector clans present, it'll be even easier. I shall show you all something, as well as ask the person from the Protector clan to explain whether this is true or not. Bai Jian raised a medallion and immediately poured a strand of saint force into it. The medallion immediately shone with a blinding light and an invisible intent began to ripple outward quickly with Bai Jian as the epicenter. It covered a distance of 1,000 kilometers, before gradually disappearing. For that period of time, all the saint rulers closed their eyes, including Changyang Zhu Yunkong. The ripple from the medallion was a type of message. It was forged using a special secret technique from the 10 Protector clans. As long as someone was a saint ruler, they would be able to receive it clearly. The saint rulers standing with Bai Jian naturally received the message as well, and they all revealed happy smiles. In that moment, any residual fear for Flame City had completely disappeared from their hearts. Impossible! Why would it be like this? Changyang Zhu Yunkong slowly opened his eyes. His face was not very great. Bai Hai, Jetta Tame, and the other saint rulers who had come to participate in the ribbon-cutting ceremony of the city all opened their eyes as well. All of their expressions changed, no longer able to maintain their previous manner. Jetta Tai and Bai Hai both became extremely ugly, their faces darkening greatly. Bai Hai was affected in particular. His old eyes now filled with fury and an unwillingness to give in that he struggled to suppress. Only saint rulers could receive the message from the ripples, so Mingdong, Yu Yu, and the others had no idea what had happened. Grandpa Bai Hai, what has happened? Yu Yu asked nervously. The ill omen in her heart became heavier and heavier as she saw everyone's expressions. The 10 protector clans want to wipe out our flame city, Bai Hai said gruffly. What? The 10 protector clans want to wipe out our flame city? Yu Yu's expression changed and immediately began to pale. The city lord of Flame City is a member of the 10 clans, and there's an agreement between the protector clans that they don't interfere with the matters of the Tianyuan continent. Flame City's existence already breaks this agreement, so they want the city to disappear. At the same time, they've warned and prohibited all other clans and organizations from assisting Flame City in repelling any attacks, Bai Hai said. What? How did it end up like this? Yu Yu's face paled, now without any traces of blood. She just could not accept this. The 10 protector clans were the oldest and most powerful organizations on the continent. If they wanted someone to disappear, it would be unavoidable even if it was an ancient clan that possessed Saint Kings, let alone the Flame Mercenaries who were much weaker than ancient clans. The only reason why the Flame Mercenaries could maintain their possession of the tungsten alloy mine was purely because they had the deterrence from the protector Changyang clan and Mercenary City. If they lost the support of these two powers, it would have been impossible for the mercenaries to maintain possession of the alloy for so long. Sigh, never would I think that something like this would happen. The 10 protector clans have spoken out personally. No one dares to help the Flame Mercenaries anymore. Tianmu Ling's grandfather Jun sighed deeply. He was filled with helplessness, before slowly leaving as he tugged Tianmu Ling along. He expressed that they would not be participating in this. Tianmu Ling became torn between emotions, silently standing beside her grandfather Jun. She knew that no one would be able to help the Flame Mercenaries this time around, or they would be challenging the dignity of the 10 protector clans. The outcome would be unimaginable. There had never been a person or organization who was brave enough to challenge the dignity of the 10 protector clans in all of history. Afterward, all the experts who had come to participate in the city's establishment backed away, deciding to not interfere with this matter. In the blink of an eye, only Yu Yu's group remained standing at the front, now isolated from the others. The only other person who did not move was the ancestor of the Huang family, Huang Badian. However, uncertainty flickered through his eyes, clearly torn in a dilemma. Bai Jian knew that it was time when he saw the situation of the walls. He swung his hand and yelled, "Attack! Take down this valuable city! Brothers, let's go! Everyone attack! Charge for the city! This city will belong to us in the future. Charge, my brothers! I swear to protect Flame City with my life. I swear on my life to protect our family. I swear to protect my family. I will never let it fall into the hands of others. Flame City is the glory of us Flame Mercenaries. It cannot be taken by others. Kill!" The skies were filled with war cries as the millions of people charged at Flame City like a tide. None of them were weak, so the tall walls could not obstruct them at all. Several Earth Saint Masters leaped up the walls as a great battle erupted with the Flame Mercenaries. Although there were over 100 magical crystal cannons installed on the walls, no one had thought they would be attacked when they were holding a ribbon-cutting ceremony. As a result, no monster cores had been prepared for them, so they were now all just useless pieces of decoration. Ming Dong, Dugafeng, Little Fatty, Wang Yifeng, Tai Ta, and the other experts of the Flame Mercenaries all took part in the battle as well. They all swung their saint weapons, constantly killing off opponents from the alliance. In the blink of an eye, they all become dyed in blood. Yu Yu and Bai Lian stood together as they stared at the surroundings with pale faces. They never thought that such a drastic change would occur on the very day the city would be established. This was originally a day of celebration for the Flame Mercenaries, something that they could get excited and joyful about. But in the end, it had descended into this scene of war and bloodshed. The ground, originally red with fireworks, had been replaced by blood, while the sounds of laughter and happiness were replaced with miserable howls. Yu Yu and Bai Lian struggled to accept it as the tragedy unfolded before them. Bai Hai, Jetta Tai, and Changyang Zuyongkong's expressions darkened as they stood beside the two girls, gazing over the 20 saint rulers that had yet to move. Chapter 941. Tai Ta's strength by Hai, Jetta Tai, and Changyang Zuyunkong's expressions darkened as they stood beside the two girls, gazing over the 20 saint rulers that had yet to move. Several kilometers away, Bai Jian stared coldly at the three of them as he sat on his Class 5 magical beast mount. Severe killing intent appeared in his eyes as he said coldly, "The flame mercenaries only have you as saint rulers. All right, I'll kill you all today then, and make the flame mercenaries collapse completely. Additionally, Jian Chen's fiancée and sister will both become my women in the future. Jian Chen, I have sworn before that I'd make you suffer so much grief that you would wish you were dead. I'll make you regret all that you've done to the heavenly enchantress. This is what you get for offending me." Hatred for Jian Chen skyrocketed in Bai Jian's heart. It was so intense that it drove him toward madness. The source of this hatred was the heavenly enchantress. Bai Jian rose from his mount as he radiated with vast killing intent, shooting directly for the city walls. His eyes were completely bloodshot, filled with hatred and resentment, as if he had some great grudge against Bai Hai and the others. In this moment, all of Bai Jian's hatred for Jian Chen had been shifted toward the people around him. The expressions of Bai Hai and the others immediately sank when they saw Bai Jian charge toward them. Bai Hai cried out, "This person is very powerful, already of the 7th heavenly layer. Take the two of them and go, Yun Kong. Jetta Tai and I will keep him busy." Before he had even finished his words, Bai Hai flew out. His body radiated with tremendous saint force toward Bai Jian, while behind him was Jetta Tai with his ruler armament in hand. They wanted to obstruct Bai Jian by working together. "Grandfather, come back. They have over 20 saint rulers. You're not their opponent," Bai Lian cried out urgently as she stood on the city walls. She was filled with worry. "This is not the time to act tough. Let's leave first," Changyang Zuyunkong growled. With a wave of his sleeve, an invisible force wrapped around Yu and Bai Lian as he took them away. Although Changyang Zuyunkong had broken through to Saint Ruler, he was still on the 1st heavenly layer. Moreover, the seal in his mind was still present, so he could not use most of his strength. He was no opponent for these people who had reached Saint Ruler many years ago. Boom! Bai Hai and Jetta Tai had started to fight Bai Jian already. The power that erupted as soon as they clashed could collapse mountains. From just a single bout, they broke through to the void, forming a pitch-black crack in space. Wild residual energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings as it expanded from where they clashed as the center, knocking the people below off their feet. It injured thousands. "Even just the two of you dare to try me? You overestimate yourself." Bai Jian's gaze toward Bai Hai and Jetta Tai was filled with scorn. Without even using his saint artifact, he directly hurled a fist at Jetta Tai. The punch contained Bai Jian's comprehensions of the mysteries of the world, so it seemed to fuse with the surroundings. It was extremely fast, preventing Jetta Tai from dodging it, so it landed forcefully on his chest. A bloody mist sprayed out from Jetta Tai's mouth as he fell. He was still a saint ruler of the 3rd heavenly layer, so his disparity with Bai Jian was just too great. He had been heavily injured from just a single bout. With Jetta Tai out of the battle, only Bai Hai was left. Bai Hai was of the 6th heavenly layer, only one cultivation level below Bai Jian, and he had a solid foundation as he had broken through to Saint Ruler by comprehending the mysterious beast furs. So even though he was weaker than Bai Jian, he was able to stand his ground against Bai Jian for quite a while and go without suffering defeat for some time. Bai Hai and Bai Jian's battle was extremely intense. Every time they clashed, the booms would be thunderous and absolutely deafening. Wild ripples of energy expanded in all directions, causing the ground to crack and mountains to collapse. It was as if an apocalypse had arrived. Flame City was also struck with the residual energies from their battle. However, it was made of tungsten alloy and was as tough as the 7 capitals of the continent. Although the battle was intense, it did not even shake Flame City. Bai Hai and Bai Jian fought as they rose up in the air, surpassing an altitude of 10,000 meters very quickly. They became 2 white specks in the sky. They worried that too many people would be injured from the shockwaves of their battle and thus suffer celestial decay. This was why they moved the battle so high up in the air. Meanwhile, the alliance formed from over 20 peak-level mercenary groups continued their battle with the Flame Mercenaries. The various experts that had come from all over the continent only watched on from afar, and none had any intentions of interfering. The Flame Mercenaries suffered an irremediable lack in both numbers and strength compared to the Extinguishing Alliance. As a result, the Flame Mercenaries fell into a disadvantaged situation without long, forcefully suppressed by the opponents that outnumbered them by several times. They sustained heavy casualties. Ming Dong, Little Fatty, Wang Yufeng, Du Gufeng, and the others worked hard to kill their opponents, constantly cutting down members of the alliance. However, the person with the most outstanding performance was Tai Ta. He was dyed in blood, while his burly body stood out among the crowds of people. He was like a small moving mountain. Tai Ta's clothes had already been reduced to shreds, while the huge axe in his hand constantly dropped with bright red blood. Every time he swung out, he would slaughter several members of the alliance. No one could resist a strike of his. Chapter 942. Protector Shui Sai's Tai Ta's huge axe cut through the sky as it shone with faint golden light, colliding with the Saint Ruler's machete. Boom! The axe and machete collided violently, and a wild ripple of residual energy expanded from their clashing point. It quickly reached the surroundings, knocking everyone in a radius of 1,000 meters into the air. Only Heaven Saint Masters could remain where they were. Heavy pieces of soil were lifted up into the air of the region, kicking dust into the air and enveloping the entire battlefield. Tai Ta's body flickered with golden light as the violent energy struck his body. He actually remained unmoving like a mountain. Tai Ta maintained control over his axe as it crushed heavily down toward the Saint Ruler's head. The Saint Ruler had used his Saint weapon to block Tai Ta's axe, but the lower half of his body had already sunken into the ground. He could only be seen from waist up, and he was rather pale. However, shock and disbelief were even more evident from him. Tai Ta forcefully went up against a Saint Ruler as a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master. They were matched, and Tai Ta even seemed to have the upper hand. The other Saint Rulers from the Extinguishing Alliance who had yet to participate in the battle discovered this. They all became astounded. He's clearly just a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master, yet he can forcefully take on a strike from a Saint Ruler. Who is this person? His battle prowess is terrifying, growled a middle-aged man. His voice was filled with deep shock. Lu Zheng is already a 3rd Heavenly Layer Saint Ruler. Even 1st Heavenly Layer Saint Rulers can't take on a strike like that without suffering injury. Who is he? He's clearly a Heaven Saint Master, yet he's so terrifying. And that person seems to be immune to Lu Zheng's frozen space. That's unbelievable. How does he do it? Perhaps he has some powerful ancient secret technique? The Saint Rulers all stated their thoughts. All of them found it quite unreal that Tai Ta could fight on equal grounds with a 3rd Heavenly Layer Saint Ruler as a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master. All those below Saint Ruler were ants. This was a saying that had persisted on the continent even until now, and it had always held true. Yet today they had seen someone prove it wrong. This was an impossible miracle in their eyes. Ming Dong and the others naturally saw this as well. With their mouths agape, they stared in complete disbelief. They knew that Tai Ta was powerful, but they had never even thought that he would be so strong, able to stand his ground against a Saint Ruler. Many experts from hermit and ancient clans who watched from afar also discovered Tai Ta's extraordinaire. They all focused their attention on him as uneasiness flickered through their eyes. Tai Ta, good on you. Kill viciously, kill off all the invaders of our homeland, Wang Yifeng cried out from afar. He was filled with excitement. With that, Tai Ta immediately thought of why all these people had come here. Anger immediately flushed his face, and with a bellow, an extremely tremendous energy immediately began to pour from his body. It powered up his arms and passed through the axe, pushing Lu Zheng's body down by another 30 centimeters. Only his upper body was visible now. Lu Zheng immediately became filled with burning fury as he realized that he had actually been forced into such a horrible position by an ant-like heaven saint master. His dignity as a saint ruler had been trampled on, and to him, this was an uncleanable embarrassment. He would be too ashamed to see anyone in the future. This was because something so exaggerated had never occurred on the continent before. A saint ruler had actually been beaten into the ground by a heaven saint master. After the battle, his name would spread across the continent, but it would not bring any glory or status, only jeering and mockery. Lu Zheng became even angrier as he thought about it, before he roared out involuntarily. Surging saint force poured into his body as he utilized every inch of his strength into blocking Tai Ta's axe. His body immediately shot up from the ground, leaving behind a hole that was around a meter deep. "Kiddo, I'll tear you to shreds." Lu Zheng bellowed furiously. The machete in his hand chopped toward Tai Ta's head as it burned with flames that were coated in dense world force. This time, Lu Zheng used everything he had. All his strength as a third heavenly layer saint ruler had been displayed. He had held nothing back. Tai Ta felt no fear. With his two hands gripping his axe, he chopped out once again toward Lu Zheng. The axe and blade clashed, producing an explosive boom. Wild ripples of energy knocked both of them backward. Suddenly, an extremely powerful battle intent filled the surroundings. The battle intent seemed to be able to invade people's blood and possess them, unknowingly affecting everyone. The battle between the Flame Mercenaries and the Extinguishing Alliance became even more intense as they were influenced by this battle intent. Both sides seemed to completely throw themselves into the battle, forgetting pain and forgetting themselves. All that was left in their heads was to fight, to fight, to fight. All the experts who watched on from afar became surprised. They could naturally feel the battle intent that flooded the battlefield, and they all glanced toward Tai Ta. This was because they could all sense extremely clearly that this battle intent originated from him. In this moment, Tai Ta hovered 3 meters in the air as he radiated with battle intent. With his stalwart body, he seemed like an ancient war god. He slowly raised the giant axe in his hand as the golden light on it became more and more intense. In the blink of an eye, a gigantic blurry golden axe materialized above his head, before chopping wildly toward Lu Zheng. If someone had looked carefully, they would clearly see that Bai Jian's saint weapon was trembling gently. But very quickly, Bai Jian's face became filled with killing intent again. He said, "The more extraordinary you are, the more I cannot leave you alive." Bai Jian fused with the surrounding space once again to charge at Tai Ta. He caught up in the blink of an eye, locking Tai Ta by freezing space before stabbing out at lightning speed. The golden light on Tai Ta's body flickered rapidly as he directly overcame Bai Jian's frozen space. He swung out once again, but it was much weaker than before. Bai Jian's body shook violently from the strike, but he did not take a step back this time. On the other hand, Tai Ta stumbled rapidly backward, leaving deep footprints in the ground. "You're actually able to move freely in my frozen space," Bai Jian exclaimed. His voice was full of shock, but he did not hesitate with his following moves, chasing up to Tai Ta once again and striking out. Mysteries of war, celestial movement. Tai Ta bellowed. He suddenly disappeared as Bai Jian's saint weapon arrived, reappearing 10 meters away. Although he had dodged the attack, Bai Jian had left a small nick on his left arm. A golden fluid flowed from it. "What? Golden blood?" Bai Jian immediately cried out when he saw golden blood bleed from Tai Ta's wound. He was filled with disbelief, as if he had just discovered a whole new continent. How is that possible? How can his blood be golden? All the saint rulers also discovered Tai Ta's peculiarity and cried out as well. Tai Ta's expression changed greatly and his giant axe immediately disappeared. He used his other hand to cover the wound tightly, concealing the golden blood. He was uneasy. The golden blood had always been Tai Ta's biggest secret. Only Jian Qin and Ming Dong knew about it, and he had told no one other than the two of them. This was because he had always been afraid that he would end up being treated as a monster if other people learned that his blood was golden. Chapter 945. Third Layer of the Chaotic Body. 1. Changyang Zuyunkong's expression darkened. He glanced back at the first city that had been constructed purely out of tungsten alloy and had over 100,000 members. His eyes were filled with pain. He had only been able to break through to Saint Ruler and return to the continent because his grandson completely forsook his personal safety and risked his life to obtain dragon's saliva from the fantasy Star Ocean. If it were not for the dragon's saliva, how would he have been able to return to the continent from 3 Saint Island? He probably would still be waiting silently for the end of his life, never to be able to break through. As a result, Changyang Zuyunkong felt a deep gratitude toward his grandson. Yet right now, his grandson's flame city was about to be taken by someone else, while all he could do was watch helplessly. This overwhelmed Changyang Zuyunkong with pain and sadness. This city was not any old city either, but one that had been completely constructed out of tungsten alloy, which was 10 times more valuable than purple coins. It would be able to stand parallel to the 7 capitals of the continent. Konger, let's go. We can't interfere with the matters here at all, Changyang Zuyun said softly. She too was torn between emotions. She clearly understood her son's pain. She also felt intense gratitude to Jianqin because he allowed their family to reunite. However, everything currently unfolding was beyond what they could help with. Yu Yu and Bai Lian, who stood beside Changyang Zuyunkong, were also overwhelmed by grief as clear tears rolled uncontrollably down their cheeks. The two of them knew that having Flame City taken away from them would become an unchangeable reality with everything like this now. The city was Jianqin's property. It was the task he had handed over to the two of them. They had devoted several years' worth of painstaking effort and hard work on the city, almost exhausting all the resources that Jianqin had left behind. It took them over 100,000 people to build, yet as soon as it was completed, such a tragedy occurred. It filled the two of them with absolute pain and an unwillingness to just stand down. They had devoted so much, yet it would be taken by others in the end. They struggled to endure or accept this. Jianqin, sorry. I failed to live up to your expectations. I couldn't keep Flame City, Yu Yu sobbed softly. Her voice was filled with helplessness and a feeling of being wronged. Wang Yifeng, Little Fatty, Dugafeng, Yun Zheng, Senior and the other experts of the Flame Mercenaries all focused on the two girls. Each and every one of them was depressed and dejected, no longer possessing any will to fight. Clearly, they already knew about the fate of the city. Changyang Zuyunkong hesitated for a very long time before sighing deeply. All right, let's go. But I'm taking away everyone who is related to Jianqin. In that moment, Changyang Zuyunkong seemed to grow a lot older. No one on the Tianyuan continent had the power to interfere with what was unfolding before them, as it was the decision of the 10 protector clans. Changyang Zuyunkong waved his sleeve, slowly raising Yu Yu and the others into the air with his abilities as a saint ruler. He stood with Changyang Zuyunshao as he looked down. Bai Hai, Jetta Tai, let's return to the Changyang clan first. Bai Hai and Jetta Tai hesitated slightly before flying over as well. They planned on leaving with Changyang Zuyunkong because they could already vaguely guess that the extinguishing alliance would not let them off if they continued to stay. Bai Jian immediately became extremely ugly as he saw that everyone important to Jianqin was about to be taken away. He bellowed, "Wait, as a member of the Changyang clan, you, Changyang Zuyunkong, can naturally leave. But they're not members of the protector clans, so they can't leave." Bai Jian had already set his eyes on the lives of those around Jianqin, unwilling to let anyone off. How could he let them leave so easily? Only with that could he vent his hatred for Jianqin and relieve himself of this grudge. Changyang Zuyunkong's face darkened as cold light began to flicker in his eyes. Before he could even speak out, Changyang Zuyunxiao's voice rang out. "When did you have the right to nitpick who the Changyang clan can take away? If you want to speak anymore, I won't be going easy on you, even if it may come off as bullying." Changyang Zuyunxiao formed a glare. His voice was extremely stern, possessing the fury he struggled to conceal. Although Changyang Zhu Yunxiao lived in Lore City, he was a great elder of the Protector Changyang clan, so he knew about this matter. He knew that everything had only occurred because of Bai Jian and his father, so his hatred toward the two of them was very intense. Bai Jian immediately shut up when faced with Changyang Zhu Yunxiao's loud voice, unwilling to speak anymore. Although he was confident with his Saint King father supporting him, he did not dare to directly provoke the dignity of a Protector clan's great elder. Bai Jian went silent, tightening and releasing his hands several times. His heart was filled with an unwillingness to abide. He was unable to complete his revenge against Jianchen now that all the people had been taken away. Yu Yu stared at the city below tearfully. Since you want this city, then take it. We, the Flame Mercenaries, surrender. The Flame Mercenaries could only surrender with how the current situation was like. Any resistance before the great army of the Flame Mercenaries and the 20-odd Saint Rulers would be futile. How can it be that easy with just a surrender? Kill, people of the Extinguishing Alliance. Leave no one alive, Bai Jian gave the order with bloodshot eyes. He seemed extremely savage. Immediately, the cries of battle rang out again as the army of the Extinguishing Alliance surged toward Flame City. Sigh, the Saint King from the Pure Heart Pavilion exhaled softly. He pointed out gently and the surrounding energy of the world immediately began to move, erecting a wall that was several hundred meters tall and over 10 kilometers long. The wall blocked the Extinguishing Alliance, preventing their advance toward Flame City. The Flame Mercenaries have already surrendered, so why must you kill them all? They haven't committed any unforgivable sins. Stop, the person said gently, but his voice reached the ears of everyone. His voice was filled with peace, immediately wiping out all the rash and bloodthirsty feelings of the people below. The army stopped, before retreating after some hesitation. All of them knew that since the Protector clans had spoken out, even their captains would need to obey obediently. God damn it, you bastard! Doesn't the Pure Heart Pavilion never interfere with things? Why have they started to mind other people's businesses? Bai Jian constantly swore inside, but he did not dare to say it aloud. Even if he was 100 times braver, he would not dare to curse the Saint King right in front of his face. In the end, Changyang Zhu Yunxiao left through a space gate with his group of people. He did not return to the Protector clan but to the Changyang clan in Lore City. Meanwhile, all the members of the Flame Mercenaries left the city dejectedly. A portion of them stayed behind, planning to travel 100,000 kilometers to Jessen Kingdom, while the others left the mercenaries altogether, running off in all directions. With this, the Flame Mercenaries had been greatly affected. Although they did not disband, their strength was far from before. Flame City was taken over by the Extinguishing Alliance and renamed Extinguished City. It became a famed place that stood equal to the 7 capitals of the continent. Although Bai Jian had essentially ripped apart the Flame Mercenaries, he did not feel happy at all, as he failed to kill even a single person out of everyone important to Jianchen. They were either taken away by the Grand Elder of Mercenary City or taken away by the Changyang clan. Very soon, the Battle of Flame City swept through the entire continent like a storm, throwing the entire continent into a huge uproar. Although the Flame Mercenaries were defeated in the end, their fame became even greater, far exceeding the Extinguishing Alliance that occupied Extinguished City. This was because the Flame Mercenaries were the first mercenary group that required all 10 Protector clans to appear. Just that was enough for it to be renowned through the continent. In a quiet little valley at the edge of the Cross Mountains, an old man sat on his bed with his eyes closed. He seemed like an old monk. He slowly opened his eyes and sighed gently. It's fine if it's taken, it's not necessarily bad. Jianchen chased the Emperor armament from the 1st floor to the 9th. As soon as it made it up there, it dodged Jianchen's claws before charging back to the 1st floor, breaking through the barrier and returning outside the hall. Jianchen shot out from the gap created by the Emperor armament with lightning speed. A golden light fell from the center of his eyebrows and landed in his hand. He had pulled out the Saint artifact. Jianchen tossed the Saint artifact into the air, Artifact spirit, hide here. Once the Emperor armament flies over, suck it into the artifact space immediately. Jian Chen paid no more attention to the Saint artifact, continuing his pursuit of the Emperor armament. The Saint artifact hovered in the air as its golden light gradually disappeared. It shrank rapidly, before descending onto the ground as a thumb-sized tower. It used a corpse to hide itself. Jian Chen and the Emperor armament rampaged everywhere in the Divine Hall. Due to the illusory flash, a long trail of blurs followed Jian Chen everywhere. The other Class 8 beasts all tailed behind as they were unwilling to let the two go. The beasts constantly roared out angrily. When the Emperor armament flew toward the hall once again, the Saint artifact finally struck out. It turned into a 10-meter-tall tower in the blink of an eye, radiating with a blinding light. Following it, a door suddenly opened along the path of the Emperor armament, attempting to get the Emperor armament to enter by itself. However, things did not unfold as planned. At the most crucial moment, the Emperor armament actually forced itself to come to a screeching stop. It did not dive into the artifact space. Clearly, it still remembered what had happened several years ago. But with this delay, Jian Chen finally caught up to it. His hand was coated in a thick layer of chaotic force as he directly grabbed the thick hilt of the Emperor armament. The Emperor armament began to tremble violently as it resonated clearly. A powerful layer of sword chi shot out and enveloped Jian Chen, constantly striking him. Jian Chen's clothes were turned to shreds at that very moment. White marks appeared all over him due to the sword chi from the Emperor armament. The third layer of the chaotic body allowed Jian Chen to withstand attacks from Saint Kings of the third heavenly layer. Although the Emperor armament was powerful, it struggled to injure Jian Chen as it was not under anyone's control. Jian Chen roared out and chaotic force flowed unceasingly into the Emperor armament. With the injection of chaotic force, the Emperor armament gradually became suppressed and its sword chi weakened rapidly, before completely disappearing. The light on the weapon itself had become duller and duller, slowly replaced by a dark light filled with the aura of destruction. The Emperor armament was completely calm now. It was now completely under Jian Chen's control. At the same time, Jian Chen could feel the existence of a soul within the Emperor armament. It was extremely weak, as if it was currently in a slumber. Looks like it's mostly due to this soul that the Emperor armament possesses this level of intelligence. It should be left behind by its original owner. Jian Chen suddenly reached an understanding, and he also realized why the Emperor armament had behaved like before. It was all due to the instincts of the soul, an instinct to avoid danger. Its actions had not been committed on purpose. Shrink! Jian Chen called out. The Emperor armament quickly began to shrink, turning into a 1.3-meter-long sword the width of 2 fingers. It radiated with an exceptionally powerful aura. Jian Chen, you finally obtained the Emperor armament, newbies said joyfully as he ran over. Their chances of breaking through the entrance to the center of the Divine Hall were even greater with the Emperor armament now. Jian Chen's face was also full of joy. With a wave of his hand, a terrifying sword chi shot out immediately toward the barrier. The sword chi and the barrier collided and a huge hole was soundlessly formed. Afterward, the sword chi continued onward with no reduction in force. Boom! The entire hall trembled violently. It was not just the hall, even the entire Divine Hall was greatly affected, swaying gently. This Emperor armament is innately effective against barriers, so the barrier was weakened greatly before the sword chi. Jian Chen ravished in joy and surprise as he watched everything unfold. My God, Jian Chen, that strike is at least of the 6th heavenly layer or even the 7th heavenly layer. Newbies was filled with shock. The entire hall shook violently as if it was amidst a great earthquake. On the 9th floor, the fragments of decor left behind countless years ago turned into powder. After a very long time, an extremely small crack appeared on the entrance after all the rampaging energy calmed down. Although the strike had failed to break through the entrance, newbies and Jian Chen both smiled. Fantastic! The entrance to the center of the hall really isn't as strong as the Divine Hall itself. It doesn't need Saint Emperors to break it. We can definitely get through it if we strike it a few more times. Jian Chen's voice was filled with some joy. Let's continue, said Newbies. Energy began to surge out from his body once again. Ha ha ha, pity, it's such a pity that you two moved too late. At that very moment, a loud laughter filled the hall. It was impossible to discern its origins. It's this Nick. Has he already gained control over the Divine Hall? Jian Chen's expression changed and he immediately became grim. Newbies also revealed a terrible expression. It's not good now. If Thisnik has control over the Divine Hall, he can use it to deal with us. The Divine Hall is as strong as a Saint Emperor. Even with our great improvements, we can't go toe-to-toe with Saint Emperors. Ah, never did I think that you would still be alive, ruler of the Turtle Clan. Your body wasn't possessed by the Octaterra Emperor. But this is perfect. You're easier to deal with than the Octaterra Emperor. Thisnika's voice rang out everywhere again and the ceiling suddenly opened up. Thisnik descended slowly as a visible energy coiled around him. This energy possessed a tremendous aura. It was so powerful that even Jian Chen's expression changed. This was the power of the Divine Hall, something that stood on equal grounds with Saint Emperors. Jian Chen and Newbies shot backward, pulling far away from Thisnik. They could see the layer of the Divine Hall's power around Thisnik that protected him. It definitely would not be as easy to harm him with its protection. Thisnik hovered 3 meters above the ground. His face was filled with arrogance, while his gaze toward the two of them was filled with scorn. Currently, he was like a lofty monarch, able to look down on everything. Ruler of the Turtle Clan, Newbies. I didn't originally plan on killing the two of you. But since you have no idea what's best for you and wanted to break through the entrance to the center of the hall, it can no longer be my fault, sneered Thisnik. His eyes were filled with killing intent and with a wave of his hand, a strand of power from the Divine Hall immediately condensed. It shot toward the two of them with lightning speed as it rippled with great energy. With a flash, Newbies dodged the attack, while Jian Chen directly swung his Emperor armament at it. He struck out as hard as he could. Jian Chen wanted to forcefully repel it and see just how great the power was. The Emperor armament collided with the Divine Hall's power with a loud boom. Jian Chen immediately felt an extremely great power smash into his body viciously, throwing him backward. He directly flew into a wall of the 9th floor, causing the entire hall to shake gently. Jian Chen produced a deep grunt. From the attack, all his organs had been shaken up. However, a large portion of the power had been nullified through his attack. Along with the fact that his chaotic body was tough, the blow did not cause him any great injury. How is this possible? I didn't even injure you? Thisnik stared at Jian Chen with his eyes wide open as disbelief flooded his face. Jian Chen stood up steadily and sneered, and I had wondered just how powerful you would become after you controlled the power of the Divine Hall, but it looks like it's not that great. In my opinion, you haven't fully gained control over the hall. Even though you can use some of the Divine Hall's power right now, this is why your attacks are still weak. It's nowhere near the level of Saint Emperors, only at the 8th or 9th heavenly layer of Saint King at most. Chapter 949. Thisnika's death. Thisnika's expression changed slightly when he heard Jian Chen's words, but a cold light soon flashed across his eyes. He laughed loudly and said, "Ruler of the Turtle Clan, you sure do have some knowledge. You are able to see through my secret and can tell that I have yet to completely control the Divine Hall. You're right, it's just as you said. I still haven't gained full control over the Divine Hall and can only use a portion of its power. But it's still not something you can contend with, even if it's far from the power of an emperor. I may not have injured you earlier with that strand of power, but it was still enough for you to use everything you had to block it. I wonder how many more attacks at that level you can resist." Thisnik suddenly pushed out with one hand when he finished his words. Immediately, several strands of power shot toward Jian Chen with a devastating aura. Jian Chen became grim. Blocking the attack from before was his absolute limit, yet now he was faced with several of them. It was impossible for him to match up with all of them, even if he had the Emperor armament. Currently, Jian Chen could only display strength at the peak of the 7th layer with the Emperor armament. Meanwhile, the Divine Hall's power was at least at the 8th or 9th heavenly layer. It was beyond what he could face up against. With a thought, a golden streak of light immediately shot out from the center of his eyebrows, forming a golden tower in front of him in the blink of an eye. It enlarged quickly, instantly reaching as high as 30 meters as it stood before Jianchen. Boom! The Divine Hall's power struck the golden tower and erupted with a deafening sound. Wild residual energy rampaged in the hall, forming a storm of energy. The golden tower did not even tremble when it took on all the attacks. The power of 9th heavenly layer Saint Kings could not even leave a scratch on it. Jianchen hid behind the Saint artifact as he struck out heavily with his left hand. His attack immediately shot off toward Thisnik after Jianchen's heavy palm strike. Jianchen wielded his Emperor armament in his right hand. He stuck close to the Saint artifact, rapidly approaching Thisnik while the artifact covered him. I'd like to see just how many times your golden tower can resist my attacks, sneered Thisnik. Thisnik did not even fear 16th star Sea Soul warriors within the hall now that he controlled a portion of the Divine Hall's power. He completely looked down on Jianchen thanks to his overconfidence. Thisnik swung out with both his arms. Suddenly, the energy of the Divine Hall transformed into finger-sized sword chi as it constantly shot toward the Saint artifact. However, each strand of sword chi was no weaker than before. Violent sounds rang out with no signs of stopping as the power of the Divine Hall struck the Saint artifact constantly. A terrifying force formed from the wild ripples of energy stopped the advance of the Saint artifact, preventing it from getting closer than 30 meters. Suddenly, a powerful golden light began to radiate from the Saint artifact. It enveloped a radius of 100 meters, and the entire area had basically become the domain of the Saint artifact. In that area, the Saint artifact could suck anyone in or let them out, given that they did not resist. In the next moment, a wild energy of destruction suddenly appeared behind Thisnik. The Emperor armament stabbed out with an unbelievable speed toward him as it shone with dazzling dark light. Although Thisnik controlled a portion of the Divine Hall's power, he was still a 9th heavenly layer Saint ruler. He completely failed to react to the sudden strike that Jianchen had delivered from behind. The Emperor armament stabbed toward Thisnika's back, but it was blocked by the Divine Hall's energy around him. The energy immediately began to churn wildly after taking on the attack, but it stabilized very quickly. Jianchen's arm suddenly began to jolt, striking out with speed. The Emperor armament had completely become a flurry of blurs in his hand. It consecutively struck the layer of energy with speed that made it difficult to discern the weapon itself with the naked eye. Jianchen's speed was unbelievable. In just a mere moment, he had stabbed out several dozen times. Each strike possessed the strength of a peak 7th heavenly layer Saint King, and it all landed in the exact same spot. Although the power protecting Thisnik was very strong, it was unable to withstand these torrential attacks. A small hole formed in the end. Jianchen's eyes lit up as killing intent radiated from him without the slightest concealment. He immediately drove the Emperor armament into the gap, breaking through the defense and mercilessly piercing Thisnik. Spurt! The Emperor armament emerged from Thisnika's chest as bright red blood dripped down the tip of the sword. Meanwhile, chaotic force churned within the weapon, entering Thisnika's body in a rampage. Arg! Thisnik could not help but cry out miserably. The chaotic force that had entered his body was extremely powerful, so powerful that only a 3rd layer chaotic body could withstand it. How could his fragile body endure its devastation? Wherever the chaotic force passed by, the flesh and blood of Thisnikas would explode with muffled sputters. Blood rained everywhere. Ruler of the Turtle Clan, even if I have to die here, I'm going to pull you down with me. Thisnik produced a chilling shriek and a sliver of determination appeared in his eyes. He wanted to use the sliver of Emperor's power within him to kill them both. Jianchen understood what Thisnik wanted to do. His eyes immediately grew cold and he slapped his left hand against Thisnika's head with lightning speed. The powerful palm strike directly passed through his head and turned it into pieces, wiping out his soul. Without Thisnika's soul, the power of the Divine Hall had lost master as well. It began to slowly disperse. Swish! The 30-meter-tall saint artifact returned to its original size, shooting back into Jian Chen's forehead as a golden streak of light. It had returned to Jian Chen's sea of consciousness. Newbies walked over afar. He looked at Thisnik, who was dead on the ground. He could not help but sigh deeply. This bastard is finally dead. The divine hall's power he controlled before allowed him to produce 8th heavenly layers Saint King attacks. It brought me a great fright, but he still wasn't your opponent in the end. Newbie's frantic heart finally calmed down. Jian Chen secretly produced a sigh of relief as he stared at Thisnika's corpse with mixed emotions. He placed the Emperor armament back into his space ring, before slowly squatting down to Thisnika's corpse. He put his hand on top of the corpse's chest. An extremely powerful ripple of energy immediately emerged from the chest. Following it closely, a thumb-sized ball of pure power was drawn from Thisnik by Jian Chen. It was an emperor's power. Jian Chen carefully placed the power into his hand. He was extremely stern. He knew very well that this was the true power of a saint emperor, far greater than the power of the divine hall that Thisnik had controlled. Jian Chen, do you plan on keeping the power with you? Newbies stared at Jian Chen in shock. Jian Chen nodded slightly. Correct, that's what I intend to do. The power is extremely great, even though there's only enough for a single strike, it's enough to heavily injure a 9th heavenly layer Saint King. If it's used well, it can even kill a 9th heavenly layer Saint King. Jian Chen took away the Emperor's power. However, he did not dare to deposit it in his own body. Instead, he placed it in the artifact space to get the artifact spirit to guard against it. With that, the artifact spirit could block the Emperor's power even if it suddenly erupted. Although I can refine the Emperor's power into chaotic force, it'll only be an extremely limited amount and won't be of much help at all. Meanwhile, I can even threaten 9th heavenly layer Saint Kings if I use it against enemies. That's the way to get all the value from it, thought Jian Chen. Jian Chen, you've done it indeed. You have not made me disappointed. Suddenly, a gentle and pleasant voice rang out. The sudden voice stunned both Jian Chen and newbies as they raised their heads immediately. Before them, a blurry image appeared. It was a female with an obscured face. Sea Goddess, it's actually you. Jian Chen and newbies were both surprised as soon as they noticed who the woman was. Jian Chen, you've obtained the Emperor armament left behind by the death of a human emperor, and this divine hall has fallen into your hands as well. Are you satisfied with what you have obtained from this Octaterra divine hall? The Sea Goddess voice rang out. It was extremely pleasant, like the music played by some immortal. Your Majesty, since you can enter the Octaterra divine hall at will, you must know about the scheme of the divine hall, right? Jian Chen asked grimly. Correct. I indeed knew about everything here, including the matters of the Blood Demon Emperor and the Psalmic Emperor. But do not worry, I had told you to come here because I was thinking for you. I had no intentions of harming you, and everything that happened in here can be considered as a type of test for you, said the Sea Goddess. Jian Chen became silent. The goddess of the sea race was one of the 4 supreme champions from the ancient times, an existence that had surpassed Saint Emperor. Her abilities extended far beyond Jian Chen's reckoning. Jian Chen knew that probably everything that happened within the Octaterra Divine Hall was monitored by the Sea Goddess. Your Majesty, you have helped me so many times. May I ask what you need me to do for you? Jian Chen asked. The Sea Goddess went silent for a while before finally speaking out. Jian Chen, I want you to go to a place to retrieve some items for me. This is the reason why I have helped you. May I ask what exactly are the items? With your identity as the goddess of the sea race, are there no other experts that are able to assist you? Jian Chen was curious. No. Probably only you can enter that place. It will only bring death to other people who enter, even if they are saint emperors, said the Sea Goddess. This is why I have always been paying some attention to the matter of the orb throughout the years, as a way to return the winged tiger god's kindness, said the Sea Goddess. Jian Chen felt even more astounded. Only now did he finally learn why the Sea Goddess managed to survive for so long. It was all because of the winged tiger god. What filled him with even more disbelief was that the Sea Goddess was indebted to the winged tiger god for his guidance. After all, the sea goddess, winged tiger god, Emotion Yun, and Ergens were figures who possessed equal fame in the ancient times. They were the 4 supreme champions of the 4 races. Looks like even though all 4 supreme champions surpassed Saint Emperor in the ancient times, they didn't stand on the same level, Jianchen thought. Meanwhile, newbies who listened behind had already become stunned. It was a huge psychological blow to newbies when he heard what the sea goddess had said. No one on the Tianyuan continent knew about these secrets, and no one would have believed it if it did not come out of the sea goddess' mouth. Jianchen slowly extended his hand toward the orb and grabbed it. He asked, "Your Majesty, may I ask if there are any dangers to the host once the Empyrean demon orb enters their body? I've observed it for several 100,000 years. In all those years, the orb has traveled through all 4 continents, gaining several hundred hosts. However, there was nothing where even the cultivation method and power used was the same. It should not be able to harm its host," said the sea goddess. Jianchen hesitated slightly before finally placing the orb into his space ring. He began to consider his options with the Empyrean demon orb. Jianchen, remember, the orb cannot exist by itself for more than 10 years. It has already stayed in the Octaterra Divine Hall by itself for 5 years, so you need to find a new host for it in the remaining 5 years. The voice of the sea goddess rang out as her figure gradually faded. When she finished speaking, she had disappeared entirely, having departed from the divine hall. Jianchen dismissed his thoughts quickly after the sea goddess left. He looked toward the entrance in the ceiling and flew into the center of the divine hall directly. He planned to refine the divine hall. The speed at which Jianchen refined the hall was miraculous. Thisnik failed to refine the whole thing even after 5 years, which was why he could only use a small portion of the divine hall's power. On the other hand, Jianchen gained full control in just 3 months. Jianchen's soul had fused with the divine hall after he gained full control. It seemed to become a part of him. Not only could he clearly feel everything inside, he could even control all of its power. Jianchen could control the power that rivaled Saint Emperor's at will in the divine hall. The only problem was that it could not be used against people outside the divine hall. Jianchen could clearly feel several Class 8 magical beasts present in the hall. Moreover, there were 2 extremely huge skeletons in a hidden area of the divine hall. They were skeletons of sea race members. An extremely pure and vast energy rippled from them. Skeletons of Saint Emperors. Jianchen immediately recognized the owners of the 2 skeletons. They were, without a doubt, the Samic Emperor and the Octaterra Emperor. This filled Jianchen's heart with joy. Jianchen left the center of the divine hall, returning to the 9th floor of the hall. Newbies had spent the entire 3 months waiting outside, currently cultivating quietly as he sat to one side. He did not sense Jianchen's appearance. Jianchen looked at Newbies and smiled. "Newbies, it's time we left." Newbies slowly opened his eyes and revealed a sliver of excitement. "Jianchen, you've successfully gained control over the hall?" Jianchen smiled before opening his hand. Space rings immediately flew over from the entrance of the hall, all gathering above his palm. There were over 100 of them. The space rings belonged to the people who had died within the divine hall and had all been collected by Jianchen through the divine hall's power. Newbies immediately understood that Jianchen had refined the divine hall completely when he saw this demonstration. He immediately rejoiced. "Fantastic. With this divine hall protecting us, we have no need to fear even if we come across hall elders. My God, wasn't it horrible when we were chased around by those experts from the Serpent God Hall and the Heaven Spirit Hall? We can't let them off now that we're strong enough. Let's go, Jianchen. Let's go kill our way to the Serpent God Hall and the Heaven Spirit Hall for revenge." Chapter 951. 5 years. A cold light flickered through Jianchen's eyes as soon as he heard what Newbie said. He clenched his fists tightly as he gnashed his teeth. "I will definitely go to the Serpent God Hall and the Heaven Spirit Hall. And that divine general who took my golden silk mail, I will let them know that my things can't just be taken that easily. Jianchen, do you want to directly kill our way up to the Serpent God Hall as soon as we get out?" Newbies had already begun rubbing his fists. Jian pondered for a while, before finally shaking his head. There's no hurry. We should return to the Turtle Clan first. The 5 years are up with the Taihong clan, so we can't delay it any further. Otherwise, I fear that things may happen to the Turtle Clan. I may not actually be the ruler of the clan, but their grand elder died to save me. His final wish was to revitalize the Turtle Clan, so I can't let him down. I'll go immediately to the Serpent God Hall for my things as soon as I deal with the Taihong clan. I'll end this once and for all. Jian deposited all the space rings in his hand into the Saint artifact, before leaving the Divine Hall with newbies. He did not have the time to sort through the items inside the rings. He even left the 2 Saint Emperor corpses where they were in the Divine Hall. Outside, the experts from the 3 halls remained motionless. They had waited for 5 years already, but no one chose to leave during this time. They all wanted to see the final victor emerge from the Octaterra Divine Hall. They also wanted to see what treasures their own clansmen had obtained from the Divine Hall. In these 5 years, the Grand Divine Hall hovered in place. No one could see what had happened inside. Even the great disturbances from the Emperor armament ramming into the hall and the battle with Thisnik toward the end did not carry through to the outside. It has been 5 years since they've entered, yet no one has come it. Something seems off. A similar opinion would emerge from the crowd from time to time. 160 people had entered at the very beginning, yet no one had emerged during all this time. Many people felt suspicious over this, because there would definitely be people who would emerge from time to time if it was an ordinary treasure hunt. I wonder what the situation is like inside. Is Jian still fine? Has he obtained full control over the Divine Hall? He's someone that the Hall Master treats with importance, so hopefully no accidents happen to him, thought Hall Elder Hong. Another Hall Elder of the Sea Goddess Hall stood beside him. She was a woman with a blurred appearance and a staff in hand. She seemed very similar to Atlantis, the strongest below Saint Emperor, but she was a different person. She floated silently in midair. Her eyes contained no emotions as she stared at the Divine Hall. She said nothing. When he fought the 3 Hall Masters in outer space, his soul was not wiped up. It had fled into the Blood Demon Divine Hall and hid well. Afterward, he devoured the souls of both the Samic Emperor and the Octaterra Emperor who took the Divine Hall for themselves. The Blood Demon Emperor changed the Divine Hall into a trap. He then spread the word to draw everyone in, using the traps he had set up to kill them all and revive his weakened soul through their blood. He wanted to take our bodies and come back. As a result, only the 2 of us are still alive from the initial 160, explained Jian. How is that possible? How is the Octaterra Divine Hall a trap of the Blood Demon Emperor? The Octaterra Emperor and the Samic Emperor were both Saint Emperors, so how did they get devoured by the Blood Demon Emperor? Emperors only have a lifespan of 10,000 years, while the Blood Demon Emperor was an emperor from several tens of thousands of years ago. How could he survive for so long as just a soul? Don't listen to him, everyone. These are all lies he has spun. The people immediately fell into a great uproar after they heard what Jian had said. In that moment, everyone struggled to remain calm, including the 6 Hall Elders. The Octaterra Divine Hall was actually a scheme by the Blood Demon Emperor, a scheme for revival. Everyone struggled to believe this. This was because the Blood Demon Emperor was infamously vicious several tens of thousands of years ago, yet emperors could only live for 10,000 years. The Blood Demon Emperor had not died even after so much time. This was undoubtedly equivalent to a great bomb dropped on them. Ruler of the Turtle Clan, why has everyone else died except for you 2 if you say it's a scheme for the Blood Demon Emperor's revival? Perhaps you possess the power to be victorious over the Blood Demon Emperor's soul? Asked an old man. His voice was powerful. He was a Hall Elder of the Heaven Spirit Hall. Correct. The soul of the Blood Demon Emperor was indeed felled by my hands. Jian hid nothing and spoke nonchalantly. Where's the ruler of our Serpent God Hall, Thisnik? Asked a Hall Elder of the Serpent God Hall. His complexion was very ugly. Thisnik also died inside. Jian stared coldly at the Hall Elder. He had no good impressions of the Serpent God Hall. Impossible. That is impossible. Thisnik possesses an emperor's power, which was deposited into him by the hall master. How could he have fallen in the divine hall? You're lying, the hall elder yelled out. His face was extremely sunken and he seemed terrifying. I've already told you the truth. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. Jianchen glanced at the people from the two halls. He felt no fear. Afterward, the huge divine hall quickly began to shrink at a visible rate with a thought of his. It reached the size of a palm before flying into Jianchen's hand. It had become a tiny divine hall. How is that possible? He has gained control over the Octaterra divine hall. The divine hall has actually fallen into his hands. It's now in his control. Jianchen's action caused another series of cries. In that moment, everyone tossed the fates of their people to the back of their mind, all staring at the divine hall in Jianchen's hand with illuminated eyes. They were filled with unconcealable greed, and even the various experts of the Serpent God Hall were the same. Good. Jianchen, you really have gained control over the divine hall, Elder Hong chuckled. His eyes were filled with admiration. Jianchen sneered when he noticed everyone's gazes. He lifted up the divine hall in his hand and called out, "Come get it if you want the divine hall." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.